for the first time. It has been amazing, and this event has been so awesome. And I'm really thankful to the organizers and especially Salma for getting in touch with me and kind of making this happen. And they pulled off such an amazing event. And congrats to them, first of all. And today I want to talk about storytelling in general and storytelling in animation. But I want to start with my story, like how I started. Growing up in India as a kid, I was always interested in sketching and doodling. I was a weird kid who would kind of go to the back of the room and start sketching when lessons were happening, or when kids were playing in the playground. I'd be kind of making clay toys on the side, and this is me and my some of my creations when I was a kid. I was sketching some cartoons on the screen, or my attempt at Mona Lisa, which I clearly gave up halfway through. As I grew up, I went to engineering college like a lot of Indians did, but that was not my passion. My passion was in art. So when I was done with my engineering school, I didn't want to do that for a living. I wanted to work in animation because that felt like the only way to make a living as an artist in India. And I did a short course there, and I started working at an outsourced studio. And though I was working in animation on a Disney show, it didn't kind of satisfy my creative urge. And then I found that all the creative work, even on that show, was done by people coming from the US. And I was like, I want to do what he's doing. How do I get there? And it took me a few more years to understand how to study animation, like which animation schools in the US would teach animation. And then I went to San Francisco to pursue my art education. So as I was studying art, I was getting better technically. I was looking at master artists for inspiration, and I would create these pretty images that were technically sound, but I was not telling stories to that. These were, kind of technically, it had like the nice lighting, nice colors, but I was still not telling a great story. And this was the time this technical knowledge got me a job in the industry. I started working at Sony Pictures Animation as a visual development artist. So, as a starting artist, you don't get to do a lot of creative stuff. You are asked to do a lot of technical work because you are still kind of in the learning phase. So they would ask you to do more kind of work that is more technical oriented or more minutiae in detail. So, for example, I would kind of paint a wood texture that would be in the style of the movie, or I have to do what is called a texture packaging, where I have to give all these textural information and how the surfacing would be done on objects in the movie. So it felt like I was learning more, but I was not telling a story. The next was I worked on Spider-Verse, and I was given the task of coming up with the unique textures that were used in the movie, both for characters and for environment. So, the inspiration for the style was, of course, comic books. So we had to use the comic book textures, the pop art textures, to come up with both the character and the environment textures. But still, that did not kind of satisfy my creative urge. So as I was working in the industry, I was also doing my personal art, and I was trying to see how I could tell a more layered storytelling, even in a still image. So I was kind of digging through my childhood in India and trying to see what it can be a unique way to kind of express myself in these illustrations. And one of it is like, what are some of the weird things that I would see only in India? These are cows hanging out in the middle of the traffic, or there will be a lot of animals in India, even in the urban environment. For example, the image on the left is this fortune-telling bull that will often come around our house, or elephants hanging out on the street, monkeys in front of temple, or cows just casually hanging. So this felt like I was going somewhere with my artistic journey. And then I also wanted to juxtapose different elements in my urban landscape that I saw. Just like the animals that felt like they don't belong in the urban environment, I also felt like India and also countries like Egypt, they have this really unique mix of modern and old, and also like really cool modern technology with some that looks more makeshift. For example, here is this ancient mosque juxtaposed with like a million phone antennas and then a modern building in the back. And then I wanted to really refine my style a little more, and I wanted to tell a better story through my illustration. And I would kind of create these characters in my head and create series of illustrations that would kind of better tell a story. So I have to come up with a story in my mind and then kind of create these environments and the character based on that. So this is one of the characters that I created. She has a princess who kind of lives this high life in an Indian princely state. And as I was going through my personal journey, I was also kind of thinking about how to kind of improve authenticity in our illustrations, because as we are kind of getting better at storytelling, Hollywood is also focusing on how to tell an authentic story. Back in the day, if they are portraying a country like Egypt or a country like India, they would just create a stereotypical, like a sepia toned image, and then they would play a music that kind of evoked the sense for the audience. And now, when we look at it, it feels really outdated because they did not go deep into the culture, right? So, we are really focusing on how to tell an authentic story. You tell an authentic story by learning about the culture, and you understand why that culture came to be, and you learn a little bit about the history of the culture. So even if not everything comes through in your illustration, and you're not, these details are not screaming at you, it'll be felt. So, and the storytelling would feel a lot more authentic, and the context of the story would feel better, and the whole storytelling would feel more believable. And this is one of the videos that I wanted to show from the movie In Cold Blood. And I wanted to talk about visual storytelling. So, visual storytelling is a more layered way of making a movie where we subliminally create certain kind of images or ideas that tells the story in a more kind of a layered manner. So, in this scene, the character Perry is he's about to be executed for his crime, and he looks like he's defiant, but underneath he's feeling sad. And we wanted to show how he's suffering on the inside by the shadow of the rain casting on his face, creating an impression of him crying. So this was made in 1967, and this was a huge inspiration for me in terms of how we could tell visual storytelling. And in animation, because everything is built from scratch in animation, you have a much bigger opportunity to kind of design everything to complement your story. It doesn't have to scream at you, because animation, because we have this power, we often kind of misuse it and make everything fit perfectly. But also, because we have this power, we can kind of create layered storytelling that perfectly fits with your story. And this is a shot from the movie Puss in Boots that I painted. And we wanted to kind of create this image of Puss in Boots as a Western style hero. So all the lighting and the shot design was very inspired by Western. And here we can kind of focus on the authenticity of the set design. And this is an apothecary set in medieval Spain. And we did a deep dive on how like apothecaries were designed in the olden time, both in terms of the tools that were used, and also the colors that evoke an apothecary, and some of the patterns that were used on the tiles, and also how things age. Now, things aged differently back then compared to now because they use different materials. And this goes for all the environments. This is a medieval kitchen, even a medieval restaurant, and storytelling through character design. So these are some of the characters that I helped develop. The first one is from my personal project, and the second is the Indian Spider-Man character from Spider-Verse, the second part. And the third is Goldilocks from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So as you can see, character design it's probably the most important design element in an animated movie, and we try to think about everything like the silhouette of the character and how different silhouettes play against each other to kind of create an interesting contrast. And then we think about how the character has gone through their life. Do they have unique scars? How have they aged? And what can we tell from the character's design of what they have gone through in their life? And also fashion, right? Fashion tells a lot about a character. And in the case of Pavitra Prabhakar, the Indian Spider-Man, I did a deep dive on different architectural elements within the Indian culture, and also combining it with the Spider-Man design elements to create a unique motif. And in Goldilocks, she is a child who was raised by bears, and she's also a rebel. So I have to tell both these stories with her fashion. Visual storytelling through color design. Color is a very important tool in our hands to tell a story, and it could be done in different ways. The first one is by assigning a specific color to a specific emotion or a specific world or a specific concept. And in this movie, Sixth Sense, the director M. Night Shyamalan brilliantly he assigned the color red to the spirit world. So whenever we see the color red on the screen, it means there is some spiritual element or a supernatural element around them. And the next way to use color is color scripting. Color scripting is a method where, just like storyboarding, where we sketch the whole movie as sketches for the whole movie, and you can see the whole movie in like one page probably. You assign color and light for the whole movie, and you can look at it as a big picture. And when you're looking at it this way, you find how the movie is working overall visually. So in this was a student assignment that I did for the story Where Wild Things Are, and I assigned certain color groups for certain emotions. For example, red and the related colors were for anger. But since I was a student, I was a little more basic in how I assigned these colors. So as you can see, the colors are whenever the character is more angry, I'm increasing the color red. And also I'm plotting how it affects the character's mood. So it kind of starts a little, the line in the middle is a neutral emotion, and it starts off negative. And as the character feels better, I'm making some adjustments in how he feels. And he has like an elevated mood, and then when he feels sad, I'm bringing it down. So this kind of gives us like a visual cue of how the emotion is played in our movie. And this is for a very simple short story. And if it is a longer movie, it would kind of look like this. Sometimes we would start very simple, and then we would go in and add more and more details. And now here you can see how smoothly the colors transition from one scene to another. And maybe there are scenes where you don't want that smooth transition. You want a very harsh contrast between one scene to another because you want to shock the audience. And we think about contrast, we think about light exposure, and we think about the color temperature, and all of this plays into kind of subliminally telling the story of the movie visually. Next is storytelling through light design. Light design is another very important tool in the hands of an art director. And light can be used kind of enhance the mood and the tone of a scene that we are trying to shoot. And in the first scene, you can see that the character, we want to feel the character to feel lonely. So we made her silhouetted, and she's like sitting by herself, and that kind of enhances the mood of loneliness. And then the second image is a contrast of that, where we want to create like a warmth. So we are increasing the oranges and the yellows, but also making it a hikey moment, so it just feels more uplifting. And the third image is a painting that I did on the Puss in Boots movie, where we wanted to kind of convey that this is where the characters are introduced, all these characters, and Goldilocks is raised by these bears, and she has to feel like she's one of them. So in this image, we kind of lit all the characters in the same way. They all the bears are silhouetted, and their eyes are glowing like they are beasts. Goldie has the same glowing eyes in the darkness to create that she's one of those beasts. Contrasting that is like a warm light of Goldie's home that she wishes she was there in. And this is storytelling through weather, and weather is also an important element that we use to kind of dramatize a mood. And we could use elements like lightning or sandstorm to create unique visuals in the storytelling. Next is cinematography, of course. It's another important tool in storytelling. And then one kind of a unique thing that I wanted to talk about is visual irony. Till now, we only discussed how we kind of connect these like visual ideas directly to an idea, but we can also play it off in a more interesting manner where the visuals may not exactly match with what's going on screen, and this kind of creates an interesting juxtaposition and a kind of a feeling of unease, if that's the feeling that we want. And here, for example, in the movie Midsummer, the it's a horror movie, so horrible things happen on the screen, but most of the visuals are really pretty. It's sunny and it's full of flowers and it's beautiful, and you always have this tension, and you feel you kind of have this uneasy feeling because of that. And of course, after Spider-Verse, movies are always looking for unique styles, and that's another important tool in creating an enhanced storytelling. And coming to the elephant in the room, AI. This is, of course, an AI generated image. AI is gonna probably affect us in different ways, especially in animation. And there are a lot of pros and cons. AI is probably gonna help us come up with unique styles which are a lot more difficult to achieve now. But we may also see some job losses because of AI, because some of the repetitive jobs like rotoscoping or even stuff like image collection and data management is probably going to be taken over by AI. And in this era of TikTok videos and quick scrolling entertainment, AI is probably going to be more helpful in creating content that kind of satisfies that audience. And I feel like smaller studios would have an easier time creating really great content because of AI. And though there are going to be job losses, there are also going to be a lot of great opportunities for people who want to tell their story, because AI can create great images that mimics humans, but AI cannot tell personal stories. AI cannot tell human stories, and that's where we come in. So our human stories are never going to go out of fashion, or it's not going to be taken over by tech. And I want to end this talk by kind of sharing one of the personal stories that I'm working on. Growing up, I was raised by a single mother, and she had went through her own struggles to kind of face the society, Indian society, and I wanted to kind of honor her and also create a cool story that kind of reflects what I went through as a child that was unique to me. So I created this character. It's an origin story of a superhero and a tiger, and she kind of goes on a kind of a crime fighting spree to get back her life, her rights, and also kind of she gets rid of some of the society's ills through her journey. So these are some of the paintings that I did for the project.